Welcome to today's episode of the Ready Writer Podcast, where members of the Southern Christian Writers Conference share information, inspiration, and encouragement.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ready Writer Podcast. I'm Scout Ray. I'm the technical director here at the SCWC. So all of those forms that you're filling out to go to our virtual conferences and to attend our workshop in the summer, that's all me. But my newest thing with SCWC is creating this podcast, and I'm so excited for it, and I'm so happy that now we have a way for members of the Writers Conference to share their own expertise and their encouragement with other members. I think that it's a really unique setup, and I'm glad that it's a way that we can also get some of y'all's information out there. So if you are a writer who's a member of our Writers Conference and you have a specific area of expertise within writing that you would like to talk on, I'm going to put in the description of this podcast episode, both on Spotify and if you're watching on YouTube, a link to our Google form that you can fill out to apply to be a host. So just really excited about it, and I just wanted to say a little hello and a welcome to this. And if any of you want to also apply, I would love to give you that opportunity. So if you want to do that, fill out that form that's in our description box. Before we get into our discussion today, I want to talk about some of the upcoming events we have in the SCWC. We always have stuff going on. Just about always. If you want to constantly be updated, you can follow our page on Facebook. I'll also have that linked below, but it's just Southern Christian Writers Conference, and we share stuff basically daily on there. So that's the best way to stay updated with us. So the first thing we have coming up soon, the virtual fiction workshop, is this Saturday, January 18th. If you want to sign up, yet again, another link in the description. We have a Google form where you can sign up for that. It's also on our Facebook page if you want to go there and look as well. That workshop is completely virtual. It's hosted through a Facebook page, a private Facebook page, and it's a really great opportunity to learn some new things about fiction writing. The Notable Book Awards, the SCWC Notable Book Awards finalists, will also be announced this week. All of our entries for that have already closed, but be on the lookout for those finalists to be announced, and the ceremony is going to be on February 7th to announce our winners. If you'd like to submit to the spring issue of our Anchored magazine, the deadline is February 10th. We take any short fiction stories, personal essays, and poems, and the theme for this issue is planting seeds. So if you have any short fiction stories, personal essays, or poems that fit that theme, and you want to write some, you can submit to us. You just need to email us at scwritersconference@gmail.com and make sure that Anchored Spring is in the subject line. And then lastly, our biggest announcement, perhaps, is our big summer workshop, our 2025 Southern Christian Writers Conference. The dates have been announced. That is going to be held on June 6th and 7th at the church at Brook Hills in Birmingham. That is the same location we had it last year. We really loved the new location, and we're so happy that they're letting us host there again. So sign up. Once sign-ups come out, we'll announce that once registration is open, we'll announce that on our Facebook page. So again, go follow our Facebook page to stay updated. June 6th and 7th at the church at Brook Hills in Birmingham. All right, before we get into this episode, last episode, Shirley Crowder talked to us about writing plans for the new year and how to plan all of those and get yourself set up for success for the new year. This episode, Mark Whitlock is going to be speaking to us about 5 ways to crush writer's block. So I hope you enjoy this episode and you get some knowledge out of it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next one.
Are you blocked? Are you sitting there staring at a blank screen or a blank sheet of paper? Do you have writer's block? Are you blocked creatively? Today, we're going to talk about 5 techniques to leverage your creativity for more productivity and more profit. Today, we're going to crush creative block. Hi, my name is Mark Whitlock, and I am a writer. I've been a storyteller my entire career, and from 1997 to 2003, I had the privilege of publishing 6 resources. Some of them had my name on them. Some of them I was the ghostwriter behind the scenes. I also had the privilege of being published by Zondervan, with one of the resources walking up to Big Idea's first movie, Jonah, A VeggieTales Adventure. Now I joke that I'm a writer of rare books because everything I've done is out of print. That doesn't mean I've stopped writing. I still write tons of personal resources, and hopefully something will be published someday, like the doorbell that you see on the screen. I've written or contributed to other published resources. For a long period of time, I was a devotional writer for downloadable devotions and family night activities for direct to DVD home releases. And I've also been writing for an audio magazine for the trucking industry for the last 13 years. So I know what it's like. I have to write every day, and I have to overcome these challenges every day. So, what is it that gives us the big road closed sign when it comes to our writing? What is it? Why do we get so blocked? One of my favorite writers is Jerry Jenkins. And Jerry has been teaching writers about writing for a number of years, and he doesn't think that writer's block exists. Matter of fact, he thinks it's just fear. And the more I've thought about it, the more I think that Jerry is right. We all are afraid. None of us can see around corners. We're afraid of what we can't see. So, what is it about fear? How have we come to this place? In 2012, I had a major personal crisis and began to learn that my emotions were not something to be suppressed or thrown away, but they were something to live through. Using the work of Chip Dodd in his awesome book, A Voice of the Heart, or in his podcasts and videos, I've learned that my emotions are just as much a part of my body and existence as my muscles and organs and sinews and everything else that makes me who I am. And also, everything is created in the image of God in the same way that my body is. But take, for instance, let's say I was a runner. Well, I'm going to experience impairment, and I'm going to experience the gifts of being a runner. So I might build endurance, or I might build my lung capacity. My resting heart rate may go down. I may get faster and stronger and endure more. Those are the gifts of running. I could also run and trip over a curb and sprain my ankle. Or worse yet, I could be hit by a car. Those would be the impairments or the traumas of running. In the same way, our emotions can experience gifts or impairments. The impairments of fear or anxiety, worry, and my favorite word, and that relates to us as writers, catastrophizing. I tell you what, we can come up with the best worst case scenarios, can't we? We can imagine horrible things with blood and monsters and planets and you name it. We go all out when we get into our worst case scenarios. That's catastrophizing. And when we are anxious, worried, or catastrophizing, that's when our fear is impaired. Or he can receive the gift of fear, which is wisdom. Chuck Swindoll once called wisdom skill in everyday living. He took that definition from the Greek word sophos, where we get our word sophisticated. So imagine a woodworker who can create everything from little wooden creatures to great houses and finials on top of things, steeples, you name it. He or she has skill in everyday living. And I want us to develop skill in everyday writing. That's why there are 5 techniques that I feel like allow us to address this fear. Yeah, we all are afraid. We all can't finish our writing, but what do we do when we are afraid? How do we move from impairment to gift? Here are 5 techniques, all of them with a movie theme. The first one I'll call the Tom Cruise, the get over technique. If you remember in the first Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise had to break into a computer room at Langley, the CIA's headquarters. But instead of going in and through the front door or what have you, he went over. He crawled in through the ventilation ducts, and then he got to the room and he dropped down and he hovered over the floor and worked on the computer to download the file. Just like Tom Cruise, we need to get over our creative block. Now, when would we put something like this into practice? Well, when we're disorganized. I'm not talking about how messy or clean your desk is. I'm talking about our thoughts. Or when we're wrestling with perfectionism. If we're more worried about the finished product, if we're more worried about what's going to happen when it's done, we're not writing. Thirdly, the voices in our heads. And I'm sorry that that little bubble is covering that word. Now, I've met a lot of writers and we all struggle with this. Some of us don't, but I have a lot of voices in my head and my imagination competing for my attention. It could be a discordant mob, or they could be King Arthur's knights around the round table, common vision and purpose at hand. So that's what's happening here. How do we put it into practice? Brain dump. Get it all out. Go to a whiteboard, open up an Evernote file, get a sheet of paper or a journal, and write it all down. I guarantee you'll feel this cathartic experience when you're done getting it all out, and you'll probably be able to go back to writing. And because you've written it down in some way, shape, or form, it gives you more fodder to be able to go back to in the future. Also, have an editor or a reader. I have a friend who is a freelance editor for 6 of the major publishing houses, and I'll send him stuff when I'm stuck, and he'll be able to, not literally, but bring a yellow highlighter to what it is I need to keep working on. Also, a truth list. You were either hired to do the work that you're doing right now, you've been commissioned to do the work you're doing, or you've been inspired by God to do it. You are the one. Your life experience, your education, your reading, your preparation, all of those things have brought you to this point. You can do it. With every one of these techniques, there is a caution. And the caution for the get over technique, the Tom Cruise, is arrogant. We can be arrogant about our writing at times. We need to remain humble and allow God to continue to work through us. So that's number one, the get over the Tom Cruise. Technique number 2 for crushing creative block, I call the Morgan Freeman. This is where we work around our problems. Here's why we have to do this. Forward momentum matters. The longer you can keep that momentum going, the better off you can be. Now, if you remember in the second of the Nolan Batman trilogy, The Dark Knight, Lucius Fox, played by Morgan Freeman, the inspiration for this technique, used cell phone technology to create a sonar for the entire city of Gotham. You could eavesdrop on any cell phone conversation in the entire city. But he knew he was breaking laws. He knew he didn't want Batman to use this. He knew that it was not moral. He knew he needed to destroy it. But they used it because they were going to stop the Joker at all costs. So I encourage you, use this one only when you have to crush creative block at all costs. If you are stalling, if you started procrastinating the writing, you need to use this technique. If you're stalling out, where you write something and you erase it, and you write something and erase it, you're stalling out. You're not able to keep that forward momentum going. Put this technique to practice. Here's how you do it. Non-linear writing. I love the tool Scrivener. Now, I don't have a code. I'm not trying to get you to buy anything, but I open up a file and I add a document and I write. And then I add another document and I write, and add another document and I write. And after a while, I've written everything I need to write, and then I start putting it into order. Sometimes I get a finished product that I can edit and then send off. Sometimes I just get a really good outline that has statistics and illustrations and some humor in it that I want to use. But nonlinear writing can really help. You don't have to start with word 1 and end with word 100,000. You can write however you want to and put it all together. Second of all, your personal keyword. Now, as I was preparing this, I was laughing to myself that I wish I'd chosen banana or horseshoe as my keyword or something really creative. Instead, I just used the word edit. Here's what I mean. I'm writing along and I get blocked. To work around my creative block, I type the word edit and then keep writing. And then when I'm done, I'll do a global search of my document, go back and find where I've typed edit, finish that, and move forward. But here's the thing, like everyone, we talked about a caution. You're going to get a citation. You're going to get a ticket if you don't go back and fix it. Here's what I mean. A friend of mine is a songwriter and performer. He was headed to a gig, and this was in the days before Google Maps. He printed out his MapQuest document, turn-by-turn directions, and he got lost anyway. He needed to get there. He needed to get to the sound check. He needed to be ready to perform. He had his son with him. He wanted to, give his son a good example of responsibility. And here he was at this intersection. Across the street was a massive road closed sign, and the yellow and the orange and white striped signs. And there was a cop sitting right behind it. He had his parking lights on. My friend pulled around the roadblock sign, spoke to the cop, who gave him phenomenal directions and also a ticket. Don't get a ticket. I'll never forget, I prepared a presentation for a client and was in front of my client clicking along and clicked to the next slide, and the slide said edit. I didn't get fired. I didn't lose the deal, but boy, was that an embarrassing moment. You will get that citation in one way, shape, or form if you don't go back and fix your work. Thirdly, the Italian job, the sneaking under, task number 3. This is the most fun out of all of them. Here's when you put this one into practice, when you need a spark. If you're working along and you just want to kick it into high gear, you need a spark, dive into the Italian job, sneaking under. Here's how to do it. Use a bag of tricks. I'm telling you, there's so many things that you can use. Roger Von Eck's book, a whack on the side of the head. Just drop the book and whatever page it opens to, put it into practice. I love these story cubes. It doesn't matter if I'm writing fiction or nonfiction. I can roll them out, and I've got a sheep and a keyhole. What do I do with that? And then I'll start working on that. Doesn't matter how goofy or creative it is. If you start writing it, you'll make it the way that you need to go. And then there's a technique I'll tell you about, one of my favorite techniques, called photo storming. And if you get to the end of this podcast episode and contact me, I'll send you a guide to photo storming. Again, I'm not trying to make any money. I'm just trying to help us all be better writers. Here's how photo storming works. So whether you're doing a fiction or nonfiction work, you're going to talk about car trouble. In nonfiction, maybe it's an analogy. In your fiction book, maybe your character has car trouble. I go to this place called unsplash.com. It's my favorite stock photography website. I type in car trouble, and this is one of the images I got. Well, there are a million things that you can see in this. What I realized when my character had car trouble, I didn't have him try to diagnose it. He didn't raise the hood. Well, that gives me something to write about. Now he's under the hood. What is he going to do? There's water there. Maybe it's an overheating issue. I realized that I hadn't described the car. I hadn't talked about the license plate. There are things that you can do there. In nonfiction, this is on the wrong side of the road. What can you do with that idea? This is on a hill. What does it take to pull something up a hill? Photo storming allows you, once you start describing the photo that's in front of you, you can go a long way. So again, get to the end of the podcast episode, reach out to me, and I'll send you a guide on how to do photo storming in your own writing. There are actually 2 cautions about this step, though. First one is, don't amuse yourself to death. It is so easy to get bogged down in all the creative stuff, all the games you play to be creative, that you don't get any writing done. You don't finish your project. So don't amuse yourself to death. Secondly, you could also end up with all sizzle and no steak. You could have all this creative stuff thrown in there, but you're not really saying anything. So make sure you're saying what you need to say, and then do it creatively. Okay, we've talked about 3. Let's go on to number 4. The 4th is named after Michael J. Fox, and it's called the Get Back. And if you remember in Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox's character had to go back to 1955 in order to save his parents and his family and his future, and then come back to 1985 in order to live his life and go on that date. So what does it mean to get back? By the way, this is the part of this presentation that always gets me in hot water. You'll see why in just a second. You use this technique for crushing creative block when you've tried multiple times to get beyond it. You just are banging your head into your screen. You're banging your head on your desk. Then it's time to put this one into practice. Or when you feel like giving up. If you're actually daydreaming about calling your editor and telling them you can't deliver, or if you're just ready to hit delete on this file, use this technique. Here's how to use it. First of all, return to your written purpose. And if you don't have one, write it. Why are you writing this piece to begin with? What is your purpose? I am writing X so that Y will happen in the lives of my audience. Something along those lines. Just a written purpose statement. Also, who is your audience? How would you define them? I'm a big proponent of writing to an audience of one, getting that down, thinking about that one person. What does he or she think, feel, do, and believe right now? Think, feel, do, and believe. And then after they read my work, what do I want them to think, feel, do, and believe then? I could spend 20 minutes talking just about that. Also, returning to an outline. Now, before you yell at me or before you turn this podcast episode off, I know that some of us are pantsers. I'm a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. But even so, I have a general idea of where I'm beginning and where I'm going. So return to your outline. By doing one of those three things, you're going to get moving again. Now, here's the caution: analysis paralysis. You could get so busy writing the written purpose statement or analyzing your audience, you're not writing. Just use this technique to get the juices flowing again and keep writing. The fifth technique for crushing creative block is powering through. Call it the Keanu Reeves. If you remember in the movie Speed, Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock had to press that gas pedal down as far as it could so that bus could jump over an unfinished section of the interstate. And when they got to the other side, they crashed through this big road closed sign. They had to power through to get to their destination, to keep everybody alive and survive. In the same way, you've got to power through your writing to get where you need to go. Now, when do you put this into practice? This is the first tool you use every time. As soon as you feel yourself slowing down, or as soon as you come to a screeching halt, make up your mind, decide to power through. This is also the best technique to use when you have a deadline looming. Don't get deadline focused. Don't put your deadline right in front of your face. Power through. Here's how you can do that. Have an external conscience. Who do you have that could be your cheerleader to keep you moving forward? Sometimes it may be your editor or your client. Second of all, do the math. Now, I'm not going to give you the solution. I'm going to give you the math problem. What's the average length of a nonfiction book in your genre or the article in your genre? If you're a fiction writer, short story writer, what's the average length of a book or a short story in your genre? Now divide that by 300. That's the number of days that you can realistically finish your work in. Why 300? One page, 1-inch margins, 12-point font, Times New Roman or Garamond. That's 300 words. One page. You can write 1 page a day. Figure out the math. Finally, set boundaries. Maybe it's a boundary for yourself. There's a time and a place you write every day. Or maybe you need to set boundaries with others so that they won't distract you and pull you away from your writing. Also, the Pomodoro technique. I use an iPhone, and my favorite app is Be Focused. I will work for 30 minutes, then break for 5. Work for 30, break for 5. And that extra braking period after going 120 miles an hour to be able to pull over to the side of the road and stop for a minute is magical to power through. Some of you are familiar with the pastor and theologian, author, radio speaker, John MacArthur. He was once asked in a question and answer session at a conference for young pastors, Dr. MacArthur, how is it that you finish your amazing sermons, and how do you write? What's your secret? He looked at him and said, you keep your gluteus maximus in the chair until the job's done. That's powering through. What's the caution here? You power through, you finish it, and it's too simple or too complex. You haven't said anything, or you haven't said anything new. You haven't given them any meat on their bones, or it's too complex. You've backed up the truck of your life's experience, but there's too much there. It's not broken down to be understood and be able to put into practice. So those are the 5 techniques for crushing creative block. Here's my final words to you. I know you can do it. Whatever your work in progress is right now, you can complete it. Just keep moving and put these techniques into practice. If you would like, I'll be happy to load you up with a ton of resources. The photo storming resource I talked about, some other things about these techniques, a longer recording that goes into greater depth into crushing creative block. I'd love to send those to you. Email me at mark@wmarkwhitlock.com. Put in your subject line crushing or something like that, and I'll send those tools to you. Mark@wmarkwhitlock.com. crushing creative block. Thank you, and I can't wait to see you at a Southern Christian Writers event soon.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ready Writer podcast, and I hope that you were encouraged and maybe found some ways to crush that writer's block of yours. In 2 weeks, we will be back with another episode, and it will be our first interview, where we'll be interviewing David Sloan, the founder of the Southern Christian Writers Conference. So we hope that you will be hearing from us then.